Senator Wicker.
Let me just follow up on that. Does that mean, though, that a chaplain would have to perform a same-sex marriage, in your view, if he objected based on conscience?
Well, I think the Pentagon regulations show, Senator, that same-sex marriage is legal in 9 states.
No, would a chaplain be able to bow out of that procedure based on conscience?
Certainly.
Okay.
Well, what we don't want, though, I think it's Senator Utah's point, is someone to be denied to be married in a chapel or a facility and so on. But certainly, a matter of conscience, yes. What I'm talking about is a strict interpretation of defending the law, which defends rights.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. And thank you for calling me early on. Yeah. We had our conversation on January 8th, and I appreciated that opportunity. You just said that your statements over time have gotten a lot more attention than you ever dreamed possible. I hope you agree that that is entirely appropriate in this context. Chairman Levin mentioned that in his opening statement, that in speaking your mind, you had said several things that caused him concern, and he asked you about that. Senator Inhofe mentioned that several of your statements involved what some people feel are policy reversals based on expediency. And so those are concerns. You and I talked about 2 of these topics during our conversation, and one of them was with regard to sanctions against Iran. You told me in our conversation that you opposed unilateral sanctions because they don't work and they isolate the United States. Indeed, you had made that statement to the Omaha paper just the day before. I have not supported unilateral sanctions because when it is us alone, they don't work and they just isolate the United States, in the Omaha paper. I'll have to say that that statement seems to be in direct contradiction to your letter to Senator Boxer 1 week later, when you told her, and I quote, "I agree that with Iran's continued rejection of diplomatic overtures, further effective sanctions, both multilateral and unilateral, may be necessary." Now, a week before that, you said that you have opposed them because they don't work. Senator Levin mentioned in his statement he disagrees with that. He believes they do work. You gave him an answer to that statement, and we have it on the record. But let me just suggest to you, Senator, that if words have meaning, there's no 2 ways about it. The statement that you gave in the Omaha paper and that you gave to me the following day is substantially and substantively different from what you wrote to Senator Boxer a week later. The Office of Secretary of Defense is one of the most powerful positions in the country and arguably in the world, and this official, whoever he or she is, must lead with clarity and precision, and people around the world need to rely on the clear meaning of the words of the Secretary of Defense. Now, the other thing we discussed that gave me concern during our conversation on January 8th was your statement about the Jewish lobby. And you told me that you had apologized for using that terminology, and you retracted the use of the term Jewish lobby. What you said was the Jewish lobby intimidates a lot of people up here. This was in a book, an interview that you gave to Aaron David Miller. And you said, "I've always argued against some of the dumb things they do because I don't think it's in the interest of Israel." Here's my problem with your position at this point. You have corrected the term Jewish lobby. and I assume now the correct term would be Israel lobby or Israeli lobby. Do you still stand by your statement that they succeed in this town because of intimidation, and that it amounts to causing us to do dumb things? Because I want to say this, Senator, you are here today as a potential Secretary of Defense, and it would seem to me that however you characterize them, you have suggested that there is an effective lobby out there, whether you call them the Jewish lobby, the Israeli lobby, or the Israel lobby, and that they succeed in doing dumb things through intimidation, and that U.S. policy has been the wrong approach because the intimidation has worked. So when you talked about the Jewish lobby, were you talking about AIPAC? Were you talking about NORPAC? Were you talking about Christians United for Israel? And do you still believe that their success in this town is because of intimidation, and that they are, as you stated, urging upon our government that we do dumb things?
Well, first, I have never been accused of political expediency. I don't do that. Probably gotten me in some trouble, Senator. Second, to address the last comment, then we'll go back to sanctions. I've already said I regret referencing the Jewish lobby. I should have said pro-Israel lobby. I think it's the only time on the record that I've ever said that. Now, you all have done a lot of work with my record, and yes, it's appropriate, by the way. Any nominee's record, what he or she thinks, says, done, absolutely. I was on your side of the dais for 12 years, so I understand that and that responsibility. So I don't have any problem with that. So I've already noted that I should have used another term, and I'm sorry, and I regret it. On the use of intimidation, I should have used influence. I think would have been more appropriate. We were talking about in that book, and you've evidently read it, Aaron David Miller's book, and by the way, it's a book, The Much Too Promised Land. He has spoken out directly over the last few weeks, written an op-ed about my position because it's gotten some attention, as you've noted, and been quite favorable to me, and said much of that was taken out of context, and he was offended by it. Those were his words. Those of you who know something about Aaron David Miller know that he is Jewish. He is a highly respected individual who is council presidents and secretaries of state. He also says in that interview, which is a fairly short interview, he mentions that I am a strong supporter of Israel. That's in the interview. So I think that says something. I should not have said dumb or stupid because I understand, appreciate there are different views on these things. We were talking about Israel. We're talking about the Middle East. We weren't talking about Armenia or Turkey or the banking influence or the Chamber of Commerce influence. That was what the context of my comments were about. On your point on the unilateral sanctions conversation and the quote, a couple of points. Let's go back to the ILSA vote about the original ILSA vote during the Clinton administration, and connect that to a comment I made in the World Herald about they don't work, they're ineffective. And by the way, I've already noted for the record here that I have supported and voted for some unilateral sanctions. I think I noted 3 specific ones that I recall. But on your specific question about the specific comment, just to give you an example of partly what I was talking about. You were not in the Senate at the time. Some were. But those who were here in the Senate might recall the European Union's reaction to that ILSA Act. I wasn't in the Senate when that was voted on originally, so I didn't have a vote. But in 1998, the European Union passed a resolution against the United States and threatened to take the United States to the World Trade Organization. As a consequence, Secretary Albright had to get into this, and as a consequence of that, President Clinton had to sign a waiver to allow a French oil company not to be part of that U.S. unilateral waiver. Now, I'm not suggesting the United States' action should be hostage to the European Union or any other country. But what I am suggesting is, many times there are consequences to these actions. Now, every senator has their own position on these, exercise their own judgment as they should, and cast their own vote. So I don't think necessarily that there was a disconnect from what I said in the World Herald to where I've been on international sanctions. As your specific point about supporting unilateral sanctions as well as international sanctions in the letter to Senator Boxer, it is a different situation to start with. We already have very effective international sanctions on Iran.
Are you saying that those two statements don't contradict each other? No. The one to the Omaha paper and the one to Senator Boxer?
No, that's right. There are 2 points to it. Let me finish, if I could, Senator. Thank you. My second point. My second point is this. Where we are with Iran today, the international sanctions that have been placed on Iran, that puts Iran, the United States, in a far different place than where we were in 2000 or 1998 or 2001, when I did not support the reimposition. And by the way, the Bush administration didn't either. They didn't want a 5-year reimposition for some of the same reasons that I questioned that reimposition of 5 years on ILSA. But my point in making where we are today, connecting that to unilateral sanctions, then we've got a different situation. Unilateral sanctions, because we've already got strong international sanctions, should be considered. I think the President's right to consider those. I would support that, because it's different than it was in 2001 or 1998.
Thank you. Thank you.